Mr. Speaker, I object to the bill from an economic policy perspective. I hesitate to use arguments that start with, at this time, you couldn't do something worse. I think that the bill is probably a bad idea at any time, but especially now when the economy is struggling and we're having a difficult time creating jobs. This bill creates a presumption that will actually stop work that is already being done. And the employees who work for a contractor, an employer who fails to pay the adequate workers' comp premiums might not get paid. I had a dialogue. The chairman of the Labor Committee, sponsor of the bill, was gracious enough to engage in a colloquy in committee, and I guess we concluded together that whether or not the employees of the contractor who doesn't pay the adequate workers' comp premiums, whether or not those employees get paid is really up to the employer. I think it's at the employer's discretion. Now, I don't know an employer who has the Department of Labor come in, stop its operations. They can no longer collect on the job that they're performing. It's going to turn around and out of the goodness of their heart subsidize their employees for as long as they have to until they can clear up their conflict with the Department of Labor. That will be a very steep burden to put on an employer. I think this bill in stopping work will actually hurt those employees. This failure to pay workers' comp premiums should be penalized. It should be discouraged. In the law as it currently is written, there are fines to discourage that. If you want to increase the fines, that could be a fine idea, pun intended. But to put a stop work order in and jeopardize the paychecks of the employees who, through no fault of their own, would then be taken off of a job, I think is bad policy, and bad policy, again, especially at this time. I have a second objection to the bill. It's a little more technical, and I just pointed out to the membership that the law currently reads that an employer who fails to provide the protection prescribed in this article for the purpose of paying lower premiums shall be guilty of a disorderly persons offense, and it goes on. And this amendment takes out the clause for the purpose of paying lower premiums. In other words, the law as it's currently designed is aimed at attacking employers or punishing employers who are seeking to avoid their obligations under the Workers' Comp Act. What this amendment does is takes out that key clause and it broadens liability for employers. And now an employer who simply makes a mistake, who misrepresents or misreports to the Department of Labor who is an employee and who might be an independent contractor, is subject to penalty under the bill. And that's a key omission because there are few things that are more difficult to decide in the law, Mr. Speaker, and I know this from personal experience counseling clients in the labor and employment field, trying to distinguish between who is an independent contractor and who is an employee. And that difference is sometimes barely perceptible, even to the employer who is doing his utmost to abide by the law. And so now that we're going to penalize those employers who knowingly make a decision to classify one individual as an independent contractor and another as an employee, not only will that employer be subject to the disorderly persons offense that Assemblyman Bramnick suggests is too large a penalty for this offense. I think he's right. But it will subject that employer's employees to a stop work order that threatens their paychecks. So I think for both of those reasons, both from an economic policy perspective and from a labor employment perspective and a fairness perspective, both to employers who are trying to abide by the law but simply make a mistake, and to the employees of those enterprises, I think we should vote against the bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.